Have you ever watched a deeply miserable person ruin their own life in real time? It is genuinely a beautiful experience. Here are 50 times instant karma absolutely humbled the worst people in the country. Before we start, YouTube just added a hype button that you can only use 3 times a week. I challenge you to save it, but if a fact here completely shocks you, hit it. 1. Breaking into a house is already a terrible career choice, but this guy really aimed for the bottom. A burglar decided the best entry point was scaling a roof, only to immediately crash straight through a glass skylight. Instead of just taking the loss and a trip to the emergency room, this absolute genius had the audacity to sue the homeowners for his injuries. He claimed their house was unsafe for him to illegally rob. The judge tossed the lawsuit out so fast it practically broke the sound barrier. The only thing bruised worse than his tailbone was his wildly inflated ego. 2. Corporate bullies usually win, but this one got a glorious reality check. A notorious patent troll company made absolute millions playing legal mafia, suing defenseless mom-and-pop shops over a wildly vague software patent they bought for pennies. Their lucrative extortion scheme finally hit a brick wall when a group of exhausted business owners pooled their cash and fought back. In court, they successfully proved the original patent was completely invalid from day one. The judge forced the greedy trolls to pay millions in legal fees, instantly bankrupting their entire operation. 3. You definitely know that mega-famous daytime television host who built a billion-dollar empire entirely around the sweet motto of simply being kind. Well, that wholesome facade shattered spectacularly. Dozens of her own staff members suddenly came forward with highly detailed, verified stories, exposing her for running one of the most toxic, verbally abusive, and utterly cruel sets in the industry. The public backlash was absolutely magnificent. Her massively popular daily show was quickly canceled, completely torching her pristine reputation. Acting nice on camera simply does not excuse being a total nightmare in reality. 4. Nothing screams deep personal insecurity quite like outfitting a massive pickup truck just to blow exhaust at people you dislike. One brilliant driver thought it would be hilarious to go coal rolling, intentionally blasting thick clouds of toxic black smoke onto a peaceful group of roadside environmental protesters. He was laughing right up until the red and blue lights flashed. He completely failed to notice the fully marked police cruiser sitting directly behind the protest line. The officer instantly pulled him over, slapping him with a massive federal fine for deliberately violating strict vehicle emissions laws. 5. If you plan to digitally harass someone whose literal profession is finding hidden information, maybe cover your tracks. An anonymous internet troll created fake profiles to relentlessly send terrifying threats to a local investigative journalist. His master plan fell apart because he was simply too cheap to pay for his own internet. He sent his nastiest message while leeching off the free Wi-Fi at a neighborhood cafe. The journalist easily pulled the timestamp, acquired the shop's high-definition security footage, and clearly identified his smug face. The hunter instantly became the hunted, leading straight to handcuffs. 6. Dedication to a scam is one thing, but completely forgetting your own lie on live television is legendary. This guy spent years cashing hefty government disability checks by aggressively pretending he was completely paralyzed from the waist down. He lived the easy life until he somehow won a brand new, heavy-duty pickup truck in a local community raffle. When the news cameras rolled up to capture the heartwarming moment, excitement overrode his memory. The supposedly paralyzed man triumphantly leaped out of his wheelchair and sprinted toward his prize. He lost the truck, the checks, and his freedom instantly. 7. Trying to scam a free meal out of a hardworking diner is pathetic, but this genius took it to an entirely new level of gross. A customer aggressively tried to extort a local restaurant by threatening to leave a devastating review, loudly claiming he found a massive cockroach swimming in his soup. The owner politely refused to pay up and went straight to social media. He publicly replied by attaching high-definition security footage showing the exact moment the scammer reached into his own coat pocket, pulled out a dead bug, and carefully garnished his own dinner plate. 8. An incredibly brave internet troll spent every single night hiding behind a cartoon profile picture, leaving the most vile, hateful comments on random social media pages. He felt like an absolute god of the digital underworld until reality knocked on his cubicle. It turns out his employer had a highly competent IT department that easily linked his anonymous accounts directly to his work email. The company dragged him into a Monday morning meeting and fired him right on the spot. He quickly learned the hard way that being a vicious keyboard warrior is not a federally protected class. 9. Calling in sick to skip the office and enjoy a gorgeous afternoon is a time-honored tradition, but keeping a low profile is mandatory. One corporate worker called his boss coughing loudly, claiming he had a brutal strain of the flu just so he could attend a Major League Baseball game. His flawless deception shattered during the 7th inning when stadium cameras zoomed in on him holding a massive plate of nachos. His wildly cheering face was plastered across the giant jumbotron during the fan of the game segment, while his extremely unimpressed boss watched the live broadcast from home. 10. Demanding millions of dollars because a bird allegedly beat you up sounds completely unhinged. Yet one man actually tried to sue a nature preserve, claiming a rare eagle swooped down and severely attacked him on a hiking trail. He showed up to court with bloody scratches and a deeply dramatic story. Unfortunately for him, the woods were packed with witnesses. A local club of serious bird watchers happened to be out that day with massive telephoto lenses. They happily provided crystal-clear photographs showing the man rolling in the dirt, violently plucking his own hair out to fake the assault. 11. Being a teenage tech genius is fantastic, right up until your massive ego overrides your basic common sense. A high school student managed to successfully hack into his district's highly secure grading system, changing his entire transcript of failing marks into straight A excellence. It was a flawless digital heist, but he just could not keep his mouth shut. He was so incredibly proud of his criminal masterpiece that he posted a detailed breakdown on his public social media accounts. The administration saw the post immediately, handing him a permanent expulsion and a felony-level cheating violation on his record. 12. Every neighborhood has that one dictator who treats their homeowners association board position like they are commanding a military regime. This particular HOA president ruled his suburb with an iron fist, handing out massive financial penalties for no unforgivable crimes like leaving holiday lights up an extra day. His reign of terror spectacularly imploded when one deeply annoyed resident dug into county archives. They discovered the official HOA charter had actually expired 3 full years prior, completely legally dissolving the entire organization. Overnight, this neighborhood tyrant was instantly demoted back to just being a weird guy screaming at lawns. 13. The music industry is full of shady behavior, but blatantly robbing an unknown musician is basically begging the universe to intervene. A massive global pop superstar decided to totally steal a catchy melody from a struggling indie artist, turning it into a massive radio hit. Before the superstar could even clear shelf space for a Grammy, the internet did what it does best. The completely unknown artist posted their original track on a massive video sharing app. Millions of angry users instantly created side-by-side audio comparisons, turning the chart-topping single into a worldwide symbol of pathetic plagiarism. 14. Taking dirty money is always a gamble, but it is especially stupid when your bribes directly lead to things falling apart in public. A highly corrupt city official was secretly accepting massive cash payouts to fast-track building permits for a shady construction firm using unbelievably cheap materials. He thought he was a criminal mastermind until pieces of a brand new bridge literally started falling into a river. A local news team partnered with an angry whistleblower to follow the money trail, broadcasting a stunning report directly linking his mysterious new luxury cars to the exact unsafe concrete he approved. 15. If you somehow manage to pull off a high-stakes robbery, maybe do not spend the extremely identifiable loot on cheap beer. A crew of painfully dense burglars successfully stole an incredibly valuable collection of rare, historical coins from an elderly man's private safe. To celebrate their supposed genius, they marched straight into a local tavern and actually used those ancient silver pieces to pay for a round of drinks. In a beautiful twist of fate, the bartender serving them happened to be a massive coin enthusiast who had just read the morning police bulletin. He called the cops immediately. 16. Selling fake health products is a modern problem. but historical scammers played for the absolute highest stakes. An ancient con artist convinced the incredibly powerful Chinese emperor Qin Shi Huang that he had brewed mystical potions guaranteeing absolute eternal life. The emperor paid a fortune and drank the magical elixirs daily. The cosmic joke here is that the primary active ingredient in these so-called invincibility drinks was literal liquid mercury. The emperor suffered a completely agonizing paranoid death caused entirely by heavy metal poisoning. The scammer secured his payment, but inadvertently assassinated the most powerful man in the world. 17. Winning an award for being an amazing boss sounds wonderful, unless you're actually a total monster behind closed doors. A wealthy restaurant owner paid a local lifestyle magazine to feature his establishment in their upcoming Best Places to Work issue. To make the article authentic, the journalist sat down to privately interview his kitchen staff. The employees absolutely unloaded on the guy. They went completely on the record with brutal, verifiable stories of massive wage theft and daily screaming matches. When the glossy magazine finally hit newsstands, his expensive vanity project had morphed into a catastrophic criminal exposure. 18. Mother Nature has a truly twisted sense of humor when it comes to dealing with the worst people on the ocean. The arrogant captain of a rogue fishing vessel made a small fortune illegally slaughtering endangered sharks solely to harvest their fins. During an illegal nighttime run, his massive boat suffered a catastrophic engine failure, leaving him completely dead in the water. When a rescue ship finally responded to his desperate distress flares, he realized his horrific luck. The massive vessel pulling up to save him belonged to a militant marine conservation society entirely dedicated to hunting illegal shark poachers. 19. Being a bloodthirsty pirate sounds romantic in movies, but basic management skills were still highly required. One exceptionally brutal 17th century captain was globally feared because he loved marooning his own sailors on completely barren, scorching desert islands for the absolute smallest mistakes. His exhausted crew finally snapped, organizing a massive, violent mutiny that stripped him of his power in minutes. As their very first official act under new management, they dragged him above deck and dumped him on the exact same desolate rock where he had starved his previous victim. He was left with no water and absolutely no sympathy. 20. Screaming horrific abuse at a teenager working a drive-through window is the ultimate sign of a truly pathetic existence. A sharply dressed businessman decided to launch into a vile, wildly racist tirade against a fast food worker over a missing packet of sauce. What he completely failed to notice was the teenager in the booth next to him, recording the entire meltdown in brilliant high definition. The video hit the internet and exploded overnight. By the time this guy woke up the next morning, millions had identified him, and his corporate employer had already emailed his termination papers, destroying his career. 21. There is nothing more satisfying than watching a relentlessly preachy politician completely destroy their own career with a piece of modern technology. A famously loud lawmaker built his entire brand on screaming about traditional family values and attacking the personal morality of his opponents. His grand political crusade violently crashed into a brick wall when he accidentally posted a highly explicit, incredibly embarrassing photograph of himself directly to his public timeline. It was meant for his secret mistress, but he pressed the wrong button. His entire career, marriage, and hypocritical legacy evaporated in a single, devastating internet click. 22. Corporate America is packed with middle managers who survive entirely by stealing the hard work of their underpaid subordinates. This one arrogant director was notorious for swiping his team's concepts and presenting them to the executive board as his own creative genius. During a massive quarterly meeting, he confidently pitched a revolutionary new marketing strategy. The chief executive officer immediately stopped him mid-sentence, loudly stating that the idea was absolutely brilliant. The room went silent as the CEO casually added that the manager's assistant had actually pitched him that exact same concept yesterday while handing in her resignation letter. 23. Cheating in an exhausting endurance sport requires a special kind of shamelessness, but you still have to respect the basic laws of human physics. A deeply competitive woman magically finished third in a major city marathon, proudly standing on the podium to accept her shiny medal. Her glorious athletic triumph lasted about 20 minutes. Race officials quickly reviewed the digital timing mats placed throughout the course and noticed a slight biological impossibility. Her tracking chip showed she had miraculously sprinted a single mile in exactly 1 minute and 50 seconds, completely exposing that she took a car ride. 24. Never try to scam the person who literally controls the digital infrastructure of your entire business. A painfully cheap company owner outright refused to hand over a final $500 payment to the freelance web developer who built his massive new e-commerce site. The developer simply smiled, logged in using his remaining back-end access, and inserted one tiny line of hidden code. On the exact morning of the company's multi-million-dollar product launch, that code activated. Every customer who clicked the checkout button was instantly redirected to a giant pop-up announcing the website was broken due to unpaid bills. 25. Acting like a complete jerk on an airplane is universally hated, but it rarely backfires this spectacularly. An incredibly arrogant passenger aggressively ignored a flight attendant's polite request to stop texting during takeoff. The quiet, older gentleman sitting next to him gently suggested he should probably put the phone away. The arrogant guy sneered and loudly demanded to know who this old man thought he was. The older gentleman smiled warmly and introduced himself as the chief executive officer of the exact corporation this rude idiot was flying across the country to interview with the very next morning. 26. Fleeing international justice with millions in stolen cash sounds like the perfect crime until you realize predators exist everywhere. The mastermind behind a totally devastating pyramid scheme ruined thousands of working-class families before escaping to a gorgeous tropical island with zero extradition treaties. He thought he had officially won the game of life. That was until he handed his entire stolen fortune to a smooth-talking local who sold him a massive, luxurious beachfront estate. The deed was completely fake. The mansion did not exist, and the master scammer was left utterly broke and stranded in an unreachable paradise. 27. Insurance fraud is a massive underground industry, but some people really treat it like a cheap cartoon sketch. A woman aggressively sued a major supermarket chain for hundreds of thousands of dollars, claiming she suffered catastrophic spinal injuries after violently slipping on the grocery floor. She showed up to court wearing a neck brace, crying about her ruined life. The corporate defense attorneys didn't even argue. They just hit play on a crystal-clear overhead security video. It beautifully captured the woman looking nervously around, dropping an old banana peel on the linoleum, and theatrically throwing herself onto the ground. 28. Dealing with intensely hateful organizations usually involves endless legal battles, but sometimes petty real estate is the absolute best weapon. The infamous Westboro Baptist Church spent decades harassing grieving families purely for media attention. A brilliantly funded human rights organization decided they had enough. They quietly purchased the residential house located directly across the street from the church's main compound. They immediately hired contractors to paint the entire exterior of the home in the blindingly bright colors of the rainbow pride flag. The miserable church members are now forced to stare at a fabulous monument of inclusivity every single morning. 29. Criminal mastermind is absolutely not a title you would give a guy who decides to physically fight a parked vehicle. A wildly angry vandal grabbed a massive masonry brick, fully intending to violently smash the side window of an expensive luxury car on a dark street. He wound up like a baseball pitcher and threw it with everything he had. Unfortunately for his facial structure, the owner had paid extra for heavy-duty reinforced security glass. The heavy brick bounced off the window with incredible kinetic energy, flying straight back and knocking the vandal completely unconscious right on the pavement. 30. Slumlords really believe they can just freeze people out of their homes without consequence, until they meet someone who actually reads the law. A notoriously greedy property owner tried to illegally force a low-income family out by intentionally cutting off their water and electricity in the dead of winter. The family immediately contacted a ruthless housing attorney who dug into the municipal code. The judge was absolutely furious. Not only was the eviction instantly blocked, but the court legally forced the furious landlord to pay for the family to live in a 5-star luxury hotel until utilities were restored. 31. Voting to defund emergency services always sounds like a fantastic budget strategy until nature actually shows up at your front door. A loud-mouthed state representative spent years actively blocking essential funding for crucial forest clearing and wildfire prevention, constantly screaming on television about wasteful government spending. Just 14 months after his aggressive budget cuts passed, a historically massive inferno ripped straight through his rural district. Because the local fire departments were starved of resources, they couldn't stop the blaze before it reached the politician's multi-million-dollar private luxury ranch. His beloved estate burned completely to ashes, thanks to his own legislation. 32. The music industry is totally packed with vultures, but stealing intellectual property on a global stage is absolute financial suicide. A highly arrogant record producer built his career by shamelessly ripping off obscure beats from desperate underground artists. He finally landed his ultimate dream job, producing the lead single for a massive international pop star. He heavily sampled an unknown track but was too lazy to clear the legal rights. When the song hit #1, the original copyright holders filed an astronomical federal lawsuit that instantly drained his bank accounts, permanently blacklisting him from ever touching a mixing board. 33. Screaming awful threats through a headset is the favorite hobby of internet tough guys, but dragging that rage into the real world is incredibly dangerous. A highly toxic competitive gamer completely lost his mind after being defeated. Seeking ultimate revenge, he decided to illegally dig up his opponent's home address and post it on a massive public forum. In his blinding rage, he typed the wrong coordinates. He actually published the heavily fortified home address of a terrifying president of an outlaw motorcycle club. The screaming gamer received a late-night visit that violently convinced him to retire from gaming forever. 34. Exploiting the pure grief of parents who just lost a child is an entirely new level of bottom-feeding evil. A wealthy, theatrical fake psychic charged traumatized families an absolute fortune, promising he could summon the actual voices of their dead children during darkroom seances. His despicable gravy train crashed instantly when he tried to scam a grieving father who happened to be a professional audio engineer. The dad secretly recorded the session, ran the tapes through spectrum analysis software, and mathematically proved the mystical spirit voices were just cheap audio files playing from a hidden Bluetooth speaker. 35. Neighborhood warfare can turn incredibly ugly when someone has way too much free time. One deeply miserable homeowner relentlessly terrorized the nice family next door, repeatedly calling city code enforcement with completely fabricated complaints about a barking dog. Pushed to the absolute edge, the family quietly installed a high-definition security camera pointing directly at their property line. The footage proved their dog was practically mute. More importantly, it captured the angry neighbor sneaking over at midnight to violently throw bags of his own household garbage into their bushes. The city happily fined him thousands for illegal dumping and deliberate harassment. 36. Power definitely corrupts, especially when your only actual skill is eating expensive food and complaining about it in print. A wildly feared local restaurant critic walked into an incredibly high-end bistro and flat-out demanded free luxury meals for the rest of his life. If they refused, he promised to publish a devastating, career-ending review. The brilliant chef warmly smiled, nodded, and kept his hand tucked inside his apron, where his smartphone was secretly recording crystal-clear audio of the entire illegal extortion attempt. By dinner time, the unedited recording was blasting across social media, permanently vaporizing the greedy critic's entire journalistic career. 37. Professional sports are completely full of amazing athletes who also happen to be Academy Award-level actors when they want a penalty call. One notoriously dramatic soccer player completely threw himself onto the grass, screaming and writhing around as if a sniper had taken out his kneecap. He kept his eyes squeezed shut to really sell the absolute agony of the imaginary foul. Because he was so aggressively committed to the fake performance, he failed to see the emergency medical crew sprinting onto the field. The lead medic tripped, accidentally launching a heavy metal stretcher squarely into the player's skull. 38. Karma does not always act quickly, but when it finally arrives, it brings a stunning level of dark, poetic justice. a ruthless, highly paid executive for a massive global tobacco conglomerate, spent decades sitting in front of federal committees. He swore perfectly under oath that his company's cigarettes were completely non-addictive and scientifically harmless. He eventually retired to his massive private estate with millions in blood money, fully convinced he had successfully scammed the planet. His arrogant victory lap was cut short when he developed an incredibly aggressive, fatal form of lung cancer directly tied to his own toxic products. 39. A brazen porch pirate was terrorizing a suburban neighborhood, casually strolling up to front doors and swiping dozens of expensive packages in broad daylight. He felt absolutely untouchable until he grabbed a plain brown box from a very specific porch. He didn't know the homeowner was an undercover detective who had deliberately baited his own steps with a high-end GPS tracking device. The thief drove straight back to his massive garage filled with stolen goods, completely unaware he was currently live broadcasting his exact felony location directly to the local police precinct. 40. Pretending to be someone else on the internet is pathetic, but organizing a real-world meetup when you look completely different requires an insane level of absolute delusion. A deeply creepy guy spent 6 months using stolen, heavily photoshopped images of a gorgeous fitness model to manipulate a woman on a dating app. He finally convinced her to meet him at a crowded downtown coffee shop. He confidently strolled through the doors, only to freeze in pure terror. His online victim was sitting directly next to the actual muscular model from the stolen photographs, who happened to be her highly protective brother. 41. Dictators usually create the exact circumstances that lead to their own miserable downfalls. Joseph Stalin, the wildly paranoid and terrifying leader of the Soviet Union, became so utterly convinced that everyone was trying to assassinate him that he threw thousands of the country's most brilliant doctors into brutal prison camps. Fast forward a few years, and Stalin suffered a catastrophic, paralyzing stroke in his private bedroom. The only medical staff left in the entire government were young, terrified amateurs who were way too scared to actually touch him. The brutal tyrant suffered an agonizingly slow death, entirely caused by his own insanity. 42. If you somehow manage to steal an expensive piece of modern technology, the absolute last thing you should ever do is test out the camera quality. A completely clueless street thief snatched a high-end smartphone out of a woman's hand and bolted down a dark alleyway. Feeling like an untouchable criminal genius, he immediately snapped a smirking selfie to celebrate his fresh loot. He was painfully unaware that the phone was completely synced up to the victim's remote cloud storage. Within seconds, his high-definition mugshot was downloaded onto the victim's laptop. The police had his face printed before the robbery report was even finished. 43. Spending massive amounts of money just to mildly inconvenience someone you hate is the absolute pinnacle of terrible financial planning. One intensely angry man despised his neighbor so deeply that he hired contractors to construct an incredibly ugly, towering wooden spite fence, designed specifically to block out the neighbor's gorgeous mountain view. He spent an absolute fortune trying to be a jerk. However, he was so blinded by rage that he completely forgot to check local zoning laws. The city inspector arrived, noted the lack of official permits, and legally forced the miserable man to completely dismantle his expensive monument to pettiness. 44. Destroying the environment to save a few dollars in corporate disposal fees is a fantastic way to invoke the wrath of the universe. The wealthy chief executive of an industrial chemical plant secretly ordered his workers to illegally bury thousands of leaking barrels of highly toxic sludge deep inside a remote forest. Years later, completely forgetting about his own environmental terrorism, the avid outdoorsman purchased that exact same massive plot to serve as his pristine private hunting sanctuary. He quickly discovered the hidden barrels had violently ruptured, thoroughly poisoning the soil and completely transforming his multi-million-dollar wilderness retreat into an unfixable wasteland. 45. Faking your own demise to escape massive credit card debt sounds like a brilliant plot from a bad movie, but the execution really matters. A desperate man staged his death perfectly, hoping his wife would collect a massive insurance payout. He bought a high-quality fake identity on the black market and moved across the country to start fresh. His genius plan completely disintegrated when a highway patrolman pulled him over for speeding. the officer ran the incredibly expensive fake ID through the federal database. The system immediately flashed red because the identity he purchased actually belonged to a wanted fugitive murderer. 46. An incredibly arrogant guy decided to take his secret mistress out for a highly expensive weekend getaway using his wife's luxury SUV. He thought he was a total mastermind, telling his wife he was away on a stressful corporate retreat. His flawless deception completely imploded on Saturday morning when he aggressively parked in a tow-away zone. His wife received an automated text alert from the vehicle's security system stating her car had been impounded. She showed up to the tow yard with the only set of keys, leaving him stranded on the sidewalk to explain everything. 47. Committing a major felony requires at least a tiny bit of basic administrative capability. A deeply bankrupt business owner decided his only financial escape route was secretly dousing his failing warehouse in gasoline and burning it to the ground to collect a massive corporate insurance check. He stood across the street, watching his horrible mistakes literally go up in flames. The true horror hit him the very next morning when he called his insurance agent to file the massive claim. He was bluntly informed that he had completely forgotten to pay the premium, and his lucrative policy had officially expired yesterday. 48. Predatory lending companies operate like legal loan sharks, specifically hunting down vulnerable elderly citizens and trapping them in terrifying cycles of impossible debt. One notoriously aggressive payday loan office thought they found an easy target in a sweet, soft-spoken older woman living on a fixed income. They aggressively tried to scam her with hidden fees and insane interest rates. What the slimy salesman did not realize was that this gentle grandmother was actually a recently retired federal judge who spent decades prosecuting corporate financial fraud. She personally structured and guided a massive class action lawsuit that permanently liquidated the entire predatory corporation. 49. High school bullies always think they run the entire universe until they finally pick on the absolute worst possible target. A notorious teenage thug made a daily habit of physically cornering smaller students and violently demanding their cash. He saw a quiet, nervous new kid walking alone and happily shoved him against the lockers, successfully extracting his lunch money. The bully felt like a king until he was abruptly summoned to the main office the very next morning. Sitting in a tiny chair was the new kid, and standing directly behind him was his father, a massive, highly decorated police detective in full tactical uniform. 50. Letting highway traffic make you violent is completely unhinged, but some people really enjoy gambling with their own safety. One hyper-aggressive driver on a massive California freeway decided he owned the passing lane. He violently swerved his sedan, cutting off a plain, unmarked black van, and then violently slammed on his brakes just to start a physical altercation. He leaped out of his car, screaming threats and looking for a street fight. His tough guy persona instantly evaporated when the doors of the van slid open, and a dozen heavily armed federal agents wearing full tactical body armor swarmed out to greet him. Which of these absolute clowns deserved a much harsher punishment? Name the number in the comments and don't hold back. If you want a daily dose of karma, history, and bizarre facts that actually respect your intelligence, hit subscribe right now. And if you forgot to use one of your 3 weekly hypes on this video, hit that button before the universe decides you're next.